Here's a really nice exercise I like to do every day or in my warm-ups for strength and conditioning or a flexibility session to really release tension in the quads, specifically the rectus femoris muscle. The rectus femoris is a biarticular quadricep muscle that attaches at both the front of the pelvis and at the knee. So to stretch it, we want to extend the hip and flex the knee maximally. And this muscle can hold yourself in this anterior pelvic tilt if it gets really tight. It can restrict your deep squat flexibility, because if we're constantly in this anterior pelvic tilt, then we have nowhere else for our femur to actually flex further, because what we know from my previous videos, an anterior tilt is a relative hip flexion. So if we can release this quadricep muscle, it can bring our pelvis in a little bit more of a neutral position to where we'll have more space to flex the hip. We're going to start in this crab position, and I'm going to maximally bend my knee, and I'm going to kick one leg out in front of me. Now from here, I'm going to support myself on the opposite arm. So if I'm working my left quad, I'm going to support myself on the right arm. Now from here, I'm going to sink my knee toward the ground. And now in this position, I'm going to do hip thrusts. Okay, so I'm squeezing my glute and extending my hip. When we squeeze the glute here, we should feel a nice big stretch in the front of the hip. And we can do this for reps. We can start to lean back even more and start supporting ourselves on two arms. Of course, you'll need some shoulder extension flexibility for this. Okay, and we're just trying to extend the hip a little bit higher. So this is a short range hip thrust for getting the glutes to fire, but then also releasing a lot of tension in this quad muscle. So I want you to do 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions with a 3-second hold at the top each rep. Now, alternatively, you can do this for more dynamic reps where I hold the leg out here and I just sink this leg down, maximizing hip extension, and we can do this for reps as well. So you can kind of warm up the range, do 10 reps here, and then stay in the position and do the hip thrusts. The more upright you get with this, the easier it'll be. And if you support yourself on the same arm, the easier it will be. Okay? And then the more parallel we get between the hip, knee, and shoulder, the more difficult this will be. How can we progress this and make it a little bit more spicy? Add a little bit of elevation to the foot. So here, I can drop my knee from a lower surface and extend that hip, do my hip thrust here, and then I can take my hand. Initially, I'm supporting myself on the box. I can bring that lower, so this gets me in a more parallel line between the shoulder, hip, and knee. Try to do the hip thrust here. Attempt to posteriorly tilt the pelvis, even though I'm in a little bit of extension in my lumbar spine. And I'm getting a huge stretch here and a good contraction through my glutes. Now I can also add a lateral dimension here. Ooh. That gets a really big stretch in the quad and also the big toe, so you're getting a good ankle mobilization as well. If you're having some ankle issues or knee issues, this might not be the best strategy for you, but if you're relatively clear in these areas, then definitely add this one in. It's going to make some big changes in your hip extension and hip flexion. Get into your squat, and this should feel much less pinchy on the side of the hip if you do suffer from hip impingement afterwards. So give it a try.